A Texas officer fulfilled a prisoner's last wish. What happened next will leave you speechless. The room was cold and bright. A small clock on the wall ticked like it was counting down a secret. Behind the glass sat a man in a brown prison uniform with his hands chained. His name was Jonah Reed. In front of the glass stood a gray-haired woman, thin and careful, holding a little tin box like it was a beating heart. Her name was Ruth Ellison. And beside her stood Officer Harper Lane, a Texas officer with a calm face and steady eyes. This was Jonah's last wish. He had asked to see an old woman before everything ended. Officer Harper had made it happen. Ruth pressed her palm to the glass. Her fingers shook. Jonah tried to lift his chained hand to meet it. They could not touch. They could only look at each other through the clear wall that kept the world split into two halves. "I forgive you," Ruth whispered, voice quivering. "And I came to tell you something I should have said years ago." Jonah's throat worked. Why me?" Ruth opened the tin box. Inside lay a torn photo, a tiny bronze key, and a folded paper gone soft from too many tears. She looked at Officer Harper, then back to Jonah. "I found this," she said. "And when you see what's written here, you'll know you were never." The hallway doors banged open. Two guards burst in, faces tight with urgency. Red lights flashed above the doorway like angry eyes. "Ma'am, Officer Lane, time's up," one guard called. "There's a situation. We need to clear the chapel now." Ruth flinched. The tin box slipped. The bronze key fell and clinked on the tile. Jonah's eyes widened. "Please," he said, voice breaking. "Please, let her finish." Officer Harper moved fast. She bent to grab the key. When she straightened, Ruth had pressed the folded paper to the glass with a trembling hand. The words on it were smudged dark, but the last line stood out, scratched deep in heavy ink. It wasn't him. Officer Harper's breath froze in her chest. Behind her, the alarm blared louder. And then, from down the corridor, someone shouted a rough, frightened shout that made everyone look up. "Officer down!" The room seemed to tilt. The clock kept ticking. And the little bronze key in Harper's palm felt like it was burning. 3 weeks earlier, the sun sat low over the pine trees around the Huntsville unit, washing the concrete walls with gold. Officer Harper Lane stepped through the staff gate with her lunch in one hand and her phone in the other. She had tied her brown hair back in a tight braid. Her boots were polished. Her heart was steady. People said Harper was too soft for prison work. She never raised her voice. She told jokes that only made sense 5 seconds later. She carried extra packets of sugar because she liked her coffee sweet and because sugar was a small kindness she could offer to a nurse at the end of a hard shift or to a janitor who looked like he needed a little bit of light. Harper didn't think kindness made her weak. She thought it made her sturdy. Like a bridge that looks thin but holds a heavy truck with no drama. When she reached her station, she signed in, clipped on her radio, and walked the long gray corridor to death row. The air smelled like bleach and old stories. In cell 3B, Jonah Reed sat on his bunk, reading a worn paperback with half its cover torn off. He was 34, tall and quiet, with a scar like a white comma near his left eyebrow. He had stopped fighting years ago. He read. He wrote letters that came back unopened. He didn't talk much, unless Harper was there. To Harper, he spoke like the words were marbles he had to roll out one by one without dropping. "Morning, Mr. Reed," Harper said. He looked up and nodded. "Morning, Officer Lane." On her second day assigned to his tier, Jonah had told Harper a small thing, not about his case, not about his fear, not about God or justice or what comes after. He told her he missed the sound of wind moving a porch swing. That was all. The quiet creak back and forth. The slow breath of wood and air. Something about that stayed with her. It was so ordinary. And yet it was everything. Later that week, as she stood at the back door of the unit, Harper heard the old metal gate outside complain in the breeze and thought of Jonah. She had not been able to bring him wind. She could not bring him a porch swing. But she started to bring him books that were allowed, paperbacks from the prison library. He liked true stories about people who failed and still found a way to stand up again. He liked books where someone saved a dog. He liked quiet poems that ended with a small light. He never asked for anything big. And then, one morning, with a date stamped on a plain white notice, his execution day appeared. It sat on the bulletin board behind the protective glass like a storm warning. No one said anything out loud. Everyone saw it. That afternoon, Jonah slid a letter through the slot in his door when Harper passed. "Could you give this to the chaplain?" he asked. It's my last request." Harper glanced at him, then at the envelope. Her job was not to read it. Her job was to carry it where it needed to go. But the envelope trembled in his fingers, and something about that made her own fingers shake as she took it. "Yes," she said simply. "I'll take it now." When she handed it to the chaplain, he nodded, his eyes soft. "Thank you, Lane." What did he ask for? She heard herself ask, then caught her breath. "Sorry. Not my place." The chaplain studied her kindly. "Compassion is not a crime," he said. "But I can't tell you unless he says I can." That night, Harper drove home on a two-lane road that ran between cow fields and small houses with yellow porch lights. Her little sister, Millie, lived with her, 20 years old, studying nursing, messy hair, kind heart. Millie had burned dinner again, and Harper laughed and made grilled cheese, and they ate at the kitchen counter with their elbows touching. "Rough day?" Millie asked. Harper shrugged. "Heavy day." "You always carry it good," Millie said. "No," Harper said, looking at her sister's cheerful face. "I just carry it quiet." 2 days later, the chaplain found her in the corridor. "He wants you to know," the chaplain said gently. "Jonah's last wish is to see an old woman. Her name is Ruth Ellison." "Who is she?" Harper asked. "She is the mother of the man who died," the chaplain said. "The victim." The word hung heavy in the air. Harper closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, she saw her own reflection in the small glass of a control panel. She looked like a person who slept enough and drank water and never forgot to say please and thank you. But inside, a knot had begun to tighten. "Do we allow that?" she asked softly. "It's up to the family," the chaplain said. "If she agrees. If the warden approves. It's unusual, but not unheard of." "Will you try?" Harper asked. The chaplain looked at her. "Would you?" Harper nodded. The first time Harper met Ruth Ellison, the old woman was at a church food pantry in Austin, lifting bags of rice that were too heavy for her age. Her face, lined with years and kindness, sat over a spine that refused to bend. "Miss Ellison?" Harper asked, holding out her hand. "I'm Officer Lane. From Huntsville." Ruth blinked, then set the bag down. "I know who you are," she said. The chaplain called. "I didn't answer because I was afraid my voice would break. So I asked him to call you back and ask you to meet me here so I could hide my shaking hands behind the work." Her words were simple. Her eyes were brave. They sat on a bench under a live oak when they finished. The wind rustled the leaves like an old song. "I didn't think I could ever do this," Ruth said. "For years, I wanted to keep my anger like a blanket. I told myself it kept me warm. But it didn't. It kept me alone." "You don't have to decide today," Harper said. "Oh, I decided a long time ago," Ruth whispered. "I decided when I found something in my son's room after he died. I decided when I read it and my heart fell out of my chest. I decided, and then I was a coward." Her eyes shone. "If I can face a grocery store on payday and a broken water heater on a Sunday night and a winter where the heat went out, I can face a man behind glass. I can bring him the truth, even if it breaks me." "What truth?" Harper asked softly. Ruth's mouth trembled. She reached into her cloth bag and pulled out a small tin box, bent, old, loved. She didn't open it. She set it in her lap like it was a baby. "Come," she said instead. "Help me stand. I'll tell him first." Harper did not press. She stood and offered her hand. Ruth took it and rose, light as a memory. There are moments when kindness is not a grand speech or a bold act. It is one person holding out a hand so another person can rise. It is waiting until the other is ready to speak, even if the waiting hurts. On the drive back, Harper sang under her breath to keep the road from feeling too long. That night, she sat at her kitchen table and made a plan. She called the warden the next morning. She filled out forms. She answered questions. She took responsibility where there was risk. She promised she would be present, she would keep order, she would end the visit if anything went wrong. The warden looked at her with a hard face that had seen storms. "Why you?" he asked. "Because I asked," she said. He nodded. "Then it's on you." "I understand," Harper said. But she did not just understand the rules. She understood the cost if the rules were the only thing that mattered. A rule without a heart is only a wall. A rule with a heart is a door with a lock, and the key is trust. On the morning of the visit, the sky over Huntsville was gray and heavy. The air smelled like rain that hadn't fallen yet. Harper met Ruth at the main gate. The old woman wore a blue sweater and carried her tin box in two hands. Her shoes were sturdy. She looked like a person who had paid off small bills over many years and learned that slow and steady can be a kind of strength. "Ready?" Harper asked. "No," Ruth said honestly. "But I'm willing." "That's enough," Harper said. They went through security. They walked the long hall. Doors buzzed and opened and then closed behind them with a sound like final periods at the end of a sentence. Harper took Ruth to the small chapel room used for difficult meetings. There was a thick glass window and two phones for talking. She told Ruth to sit. She told Ruth how to use the phone. She told Ruth, "If at any moment you want to stop, hang up, and I will help you out." Ruth nodded and took the phone in her lap like a sleeping bird. Harper radioed for Jonah. He came in with two guards, wrists chained to his waist, ankles chained together. He walked without fighting, without dragging, without anger. He looked at Ruth like a man who had spent years trying not to imagine a moment that was now finally here. "Ms. Ellison," he said into the phone. "Jonah," she said into hers. Harper stood by the door, not too close, not too far, where she could see faces and hands and the way a chest moved when a person was lying or telling the truth. She saw a woman who had carried grief so long it had sewn itself into her bones. She saw a man who had learned to keep his shoulders from shaking because he had no right to ask anyone else to hold him up. Ruth pressed her palm to the glass. Jonah tried to press his, but the chain kept him short by an inch. He left his fingers splayed. It looked like a flower that could never bloom. "I forgive you," Ruth said. "Not because it is easy. Because I can't live a lie." "I am sorry," Jonah said. "Not because you asked me to say it. Because it is the truth." Harper felt her eyes sting. She looked at the clock instead. It ticked. She breathed. "Officer Lane," Ruth said, voice soft. "May I show him something?" "If you keep it flat on the glass," Harper said, watching closely. "No passing." Ruth opened the tin box. She took out the torn photo, the bronze key, the folded paper. She didn't unfold the paper. She just touched it with one finger like it might fly away. And then the doors slammed open, the red lights flashed, and the alarm began to scream. "Officer down," someone shouted from the corridor. In one heartbeat, Harper's calm turned into iron. "Stay seated," she told Ruth, voice firm but gentle. To the guards with Jonah, she said, "Hold position." Through her radio, she called for details. Static. Then a voice. "Inmate altercation in the infirmary. One officer injured. Lockdown recommended." Repeat, lockdown. Lockdown meant everything stopped. Visits stopped. Movement stopped. Even goodbyes stopped. Harper felt the bronze key still warm in her palm. She didn't even remember taking it. When had she taken it? When Ruth's hand had shaken? When the alarm had first cried? "Ma'am, Officer Lane, time's up," a guard said from the door. Ruth's eyes filled with panic. "Please," she whispered. "Just another minute." Jonah's mouth moved. For a second no sound came out. Then a hoarse plea, "Let her speak." The guard looked at Harper. The choice was in her hands. This was the thin place where rules and hearts meet. 60 seconds, Harper said, voice like a bridge that would not break. "No more. And I stay right here." The guard hesitated, then gave a tight nod. Outside, boots thudded. Radios crackled. The alarm ate the air. Ruth pressed the folded paper flat on the glass. The smudged lines were dark with old tears, but one line at the bottom shouted like a siren. It was a confession. Harper could see enough to know what it was, even if she could not read all of it. She could see the last words clear, cut into the paper like someone had carved them. It wasn't him. Jonah's face crumpled. Not in joy. Not in anger. In a deep, aching relief that looked a lot like grief. Ruth's voice trembled. I found this in my David's desk after he died, she said. He wrote it and hid it. I was afraid to see it. Then I was afraid to show it. I kept telling myself I would bring it to someone who knew what to do. I kept failing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Harper's mind raced. A confession? To what? From whom? The edges of the paper were worn, but the ink still shouted. Beside the paper, the bronze key lay against the glass, tiny and heavy. A key to what? A locker? A box? A car? A door that had stayed closed while someone suffered in a cell? The alarm cut off as suddenly as it began. The silence felt louder than the siren. Her radio crackled again. Officers stable. Lockdown holds on infirmary wing only. Other areas maintain caution. Harper had 60 seconds more, maybe. Maybe not. She could feel the moment slipping like water. Miss Ellison, she said quietly. Is that what I think it is? It is my shame, Ruth whispered. And maybe his freedom, even if it comes too late. Harper opened her mouth to ask another question. And then the chapel door swung wide and slammed hard against the stopper with a bang like a gunshot. 4 officers filled the doorway. One of them, a captain with a stern face, looked straight at Harper. Lane, he barked. We're moving Reed now. Warden's orders. There's been a development. No more delays. Captain, Harper said, even, respectful, steady. We're in the middle of a victim family visit. Doesn't matter, he said. Chain him. Let's go. Ruth clutched the phone so tight her knuckles went white. Jonah's eyes darted from the paper to the door to Harper to the clock and back again. What development? Harper asked. The captain's jaw worked. Phone from Austin. DA's office. He glanced at Ruth's tin box. Something about evidence. We don't have details yet. All I know is we move him now. Now. Ruth's voice cracked. Please, let me just. The captain lifted a hand. Ma'am, I'm sorry. Rules. Harper stood very still. The little bronze key burned in her palm like a spark ready to catch a whole field on fire. She looked at Jonah. She looked at Ruth. She took a breath that filled her from boots to collar. And then, with every nerve in the room stretched tight as wire, Harper made a choice. She stepped forward, lifted the phone on Jonah's side of the glass, pressed the receiver to the vent so her voice would carry through the holes, and said, firm and clear. Miss Ellison read it. Now. Ruth's eyes flashed with sudden courage. She unfolded the paper with shaking hands. Her lips parted. Her voice found the words. But before the first sentence could fully leave her mouth, a heavy crash shook the corridor outside, the lights flickered, and a shout ripped through the air, a new shout, terrified and raw, that made the hair on Harper's arms stand on end. Fire in the infirmary. Evacuate now. The chapel lights went black. The clock stopped. When the lights went out, the whole room swallowed its breath. The glass wall that separated Jonah and Ruth reflected only the thin red glow of the emergency sign above the door. For a moment, no one moved. Even the guards froze, listening to the sirens echo down the hallway like a heartbeat gone wild. Officer Harper's first instinct was to protect the old woman. She grabbed Ruth by the arm and guided her behind a table. The air smelled faintly of smoke. Somewhere far off, she could hear the clang of metal doors slamming shut one by one, lockdown in progress. Stay low, Harper ordered, her voice firm but calm. Don't move until I say so. Jonah stood behind the glass, barely visible in the dim light. What's happening? He shouted, but the phone line between them had gone dead. Harper lifted her radio. Static. No voice came through. The emergency power must have failed. Her heart thudded harder, but she stayed composed. She'd been through fights, power cuts, even standoffs, but never something like this, not during a last visit. The smell of smoke thickened. The old chapel door rattled. Ruth coughed softly, covering her mouth. Officer Lane, she whispered. The paper, he has to know. I'll get you both out safely, Harper said, scanning the walls. That's what matters right now. But before she could finish, the glass in front of them fogged from the inside. Jonah had pressed his palms against it. His lips were moving fast, desperate. Harper could barely read them. But she saw enough to understand. Help her. Don't let them take it. The paper. The confession. Then, without warning, the red lights flickered again. The backup generator kicked in with a deep hum. Half the bulbs blinked to life, throwing harsh light over the room. And what Harper saw made her freeze. The bronze key she had been holding was no longer in her hand. It was gone. She looked down at her palm, empty. Looked at Ruth, both her hands clutched her bag. Looked at the floor, nothing. Her stomach tightened. Someone must have taken it in the chaos. But how? The captain stormed back in with 2 more guards, his voice sharp and loud. Get them out. Fires spreading from the infirmary. Harper pointed toward Jonah. Sir, there's evidence here. No time, he barked. We'll handle it later. Get the civilian out. Ruth tried to protest, but Harper lifted her up gently. Come on, she said. You're not safe here. The hallway outside was chaos. Smoke drifted low, making every breath taste like burnt wires. Officers shouted. Radios screamed. Someone pushed a fire cart past, another dragged a wounded guard down the corridor. But as Harper turned Ruth toward the exit, something made her stop. Jonah was still standing in his cell, staring straight at her through the smoke, and even from that distance, she could see it. He was smiling. Not a cruel smile. Not a mad one. A strange, broken kind of peace. Like a man who'd just seen the storm lift off his chest. Then the guards slammed the gate shut between them. An hour later, the fire was out. No one had died, though 2 guards were injured. Harper sat in the medical bay with Ruth beside her, both wrapped in gray blankets. The air was cold now, smelling of water and ash. The warden arrived, tall, gray-haired, eyes that saw too much. Officer Lane, he said quietly, you did well getting her out. But I need to know what happened inside. Harper told him everything, the alarm, the paper, the missing key. The warden listened, expression unreadable. When she mentioned the note that read it wasn't him, his brows drew together. You saw it clearly? He asked. Yes, sir, Harper said. It looked like a confession. She said it was from her son. The warden glanced at Ruth, who sat silently staring at the floor. Ma'am, he said gently, is that true? Do you still have that paper? Ruth hesitated. Her fingers brushed her bag. It's gone, she whispered. The moment the lights went out, it disappeared. The warden turned to Harper. You're sure you didn't drop it? I had the key, Harper said. Not the paper. He rubbed his temples. Then where is it now? No one answered. Outside, thunder rolled across the Texas sky. The storm that had threatened all morning had finally arrived, drumming against the roof like a restless hand. Harper leaned forward. Sir, she said, if that letter proves what I think it does, Jonah Reed might be innocent. The warden's eyes met hers. That's a serious claim, Lane. And it's too late for rumors. His execution is scheduled in 48 hours. Then we don't have much time, Harper said. Ruth looked up, her eyes red. You have to believe me, she said. My son, David, he was a good boy, but he was troubled. He had secrets. When he was alive, I thought Jonah was the monster. But after I found that letter, I started wondering if my son did something terrible, something I couldn't face. What was in it? The warden asked. Ruth hesitated. I only remember the last line. I was too afraid to read the rest again. It said, it wasn't him. It was me. The room went still. Harper felt a chill crawl up her arms. You mean your son confessed? Ruth nodded, tears rolling down her wrinkled cheeks. I didn't know who to tell. Everyone said the case was closed. So I kept it, thinking God would show me when it was time. And now it's gone, Harper said softly. Ruth turned to her. But the key, the bronze key, it opened something. A little box in my house. David's box. Maybe the truth is still there. Harper leaned forward. Where do you live? Waco, Ruth said. In the same house since 1979. The warden shook his head. Even if you find that box, it might not change anything in time. But Harper's jaw set. Then I'll drive tonight. Lane, the warden warned, this isn't your investigation. No, sir, she said. It's my conscience. He studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Take a deputy. Be back by morning. By 8:47 p.m., rain poured down the highway in silver sheets. Harper gripped the wheel of her patrol SUV, the wipers fighting to keep up. Ruth sat beside her, the tin box resting on her lap like a fragile secret. For a while, neither spoke. The road stretched long and lonely, the headlights slicing through the rain. I should have brought that letter sooner, Ruth said quietly. Maybe all this wouldn't have happened. Harper glanced at her. You did what you could. No, Ruth whispered. I did what fear allowed. They drove in silence again, broken only by the patter of rain and the low hum of the engine. When they reached Waco, the small white house sat at the end of a quiet street, wrapped in vines and wet shadows. The porch light flickered weakly, like an old memory refusing to die. Ruth led Harper inside. The living room was filled with framed photographs, her son, David, smiling at different ages. At a glance, he looked kind, intelligent. But his eyes, they had the strange glassy stillness of someone carrying too much inside. The old woman pointed toward the fireplace. Behind that brick, she said. He used to hide things there. Harper knelt and felt around until her fingers brushed a loose edge. She pulled, and sure enough, the brick slid free. Inside was a small wooden box with a lock that perfectly fit the missing bronze key. But the key was still gone. Harper sat back slowly. Someone took it during the fire, she murmured. Someone who didn't want us to open this. Ruth clutched her sweater, trembling. Then that means. Harper met her eyes. Someone inside the prison knows. The room grew cold. The storm outside hit harder, rattling the windows. Then a knock on the door. 3 slow knocks. Harper's hand went to her sidearm. Stay here, she whispered. She moved quietly toward the door, every step careful. Rainwater dripped from the porch roof, steady and loud. Who is it? She called. No answer. She opened the door halfway and froze. A man stood there in the rain, soaked to the skin, his face half-shadowed by the dim porch light. In his hand was the bronze key. And he said, in a voice Harper recognized but couldn't yet place, Officer Lane, you're looking in the wrong place. Thunder cracked. The light flickered. And the man stepped into the house uninvited. The man stepped across the threshold like he belonged there. Water streamed from his jacket, pooling on the floor. The bronze key gleamed in his hand under the flickering porch light, tiny but powerful like a truth too sharp to hold. Officer Harper's training took over. She drew her gun halfway, holding it low but ready. Stop right there, she said. Put your hands where I can see them. The man lifted his free hand, palm open. Easy, he said, voice calm but rough. You don't want to do that. I'm on your side. Who are you? Harper demanded. He stepped forward, enough for the light to hit his face, and Harper's breath caught. It was Deputy Mark Jensen. She knew him. Worked with him for almost 5 years. They'd shared late-night coffee runs, shifts during storms, even laughter on slow days. But now, seeing him there, drenched, pale, and holding the very key that had vanished during the fire, something in her chest twisted. Mark, she said slowly. What are you doing here? And why do you have that key? He closed the door behind him with a quiet click. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me, Harper said. He looked from her to Ruth, who stood trembling near the fireplace. You shouldn't have brought her here, he said softly. You've put her in danger. Ruth clutched her sweater. Danger? From who? Mark sighed, rubbing his wet face. You think that fire was an accident? Harper's grip on her gun tightened. You're saying it wasn't? He shook his head. No. Someone lit it, to destroy evidence. The same evidence you saw in that chapel. The letter, the paper, the truth. It wasn't just misplaced, Harper, it was taken. Ruth gasped. You mean someone inside the prison? Mark nodded. Someone with power. Someone who needed Jonah Reed gone before anyone started asking questions about what really happened to David Ellison. Harper frowned. Why would anyone cover for a dead man? Mark looked down at the bronze key. Because David Ellison wasn't just some kid, Harper. He was part of something bigger, something that went way above both our pay grades. Ruth's lips trembled. My David? No, he was a teacher. He worked at the community college. Mark's eyes softened. That's what you thought. But that's not the full story. Harper stepped closer, lowering her gun slightly. Then tell me the full story, Mark. Because right now, you're standing in a stranger's home, in the middle of the night, with stolen evidence in your hand. Mark looked exhausted, his eyes rimmed red from smoke or guilt, maybe both. David was working with a group that handled private prison contracts, he said. He helped falsify testimonies, witness statements, even evidence, all for profit. Jonah Reed was one of the people framed. Ruth's knees weakened. She gripped the wall for balance. No, that can't be. My son. Mark stepped closer, his voice soft but heavy. Ruth, I'm sorry. I saw the documents myself years ago when I was new on the force. I didn't know what I was looking at until Jonah's case came up again. That's when I realized what David had done and who had helped him. Harper's voice sharpened. Who helped him? Mark hesitated. People in law enforcement. The room went silent except for the rain. Harper's jaw tightened. Names, Mark. He looked straight at her. The warden. And a retired detective named Carl Wesson, the one who handled Jonah's original arrest. They're both tied to the same private network. They covered up David's involvement in the murder-for-profit ring and pinned it on Jonah to keep the scandal buried. Harper's mind spun. That doesn't make sense. Why protect a dead man's reputation? Because the deals he made before he died are still paying people, Mark said. And if the truth comes out, everyone tied to him, judges, wardens, officers, goes down. Ruth sank into a chair, covering her face. My God, my David was part of that? Mark nodded, his expression grim. And they'll do anything to make sure no one ever proves it. Harper took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. So this key. Mark held it up. Opens the box with his ledgers. Names, payments, contracts. Everything. Harper's heart raced. Then let's open it. Mark glanced toward the window. We don't have long. If I found you, someone else will too. He knelt by the fireplace and slid the key into the lock on the wooden box. The metal clicked softly. For a second, no one moved. Then he opened the lid. Inside lay several old papers, sealed envelopes, and a small flash drive wrapped in a rubber band. Harper leaned closer. The top page was filled with typed columns, dates, names, and bank numbers. She recognized a few. Judges. Businessmen. Even officers from her own department. This could expose half the people in the state, she whispered. Mark nodded. That's why it was buried. Ruth stared at the box, tears dripping onto her trembling hands. My son did this? Harper touched her shoulder gently. Sometimes good people make terrible choices, ma'am. But this can make it right. Suddenly, headlights flashed outside, cutting through the rain. Mark looked up fast. We've been followed. Harper snapped her gun up. How did they find us so fast? I used my patrol car, Mark said, realization dawning too late. They must have tracked the signal. Who? Harper demanded. Before he could answer, a shot shattered the front window. Glass exploded across the living room. Ruth screamed and ducked behind the couch. Harper grabbed her, pulling her down as another shot ripped through the wall. Get down! Harper shouted. Mark dove to the side, flipping the coffee table for cover. They're aiming for the evidence. Outside, the rain masked the sound of boots. Shadows moved near the car. Harper's radio crackled to life, but it wasn't static this time. A voice came through, cold and familiar. Officer Lane, this is Warden Davis. Step away from that box and hand over what you found. No one has to get hurt. Harper's blood turned to ice. Sir? You're behind this. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, the voice said. You've done your duty. Walk away, and I'll make sure no one questions your loyalty. Mark cursed under his breath. He's got men surrounding the place. Another bullet hit the wall. The lights flickered again. Ruth whimpered, clutching the cross around her neck. Harper's heart pounded. We're not giving him the box. Mark loaded his weapon. Then we fight our way out. Rain poured harder, drowning the sound of tires pulling up outside, more cars. Back door, Harper said quickly. Ruth, stay low and follow me. They crawled through the kitchen as gunfire shattered the windows behind them. Harper kicked open the back door and led them into the storm. Wind tore at their faces. Thunder rolled above them like war drums. They ran. Ruth stumbled, but Harper caught her. Keep going. Behind them, men in dark coats fanned out, shouting through the rain. Mark fired back once, then ducked behind an oak tree. The bronze key slipped from his pocket, landing in the mud. Mark, the key, Harper shouted. He turned to grab it, but before he could, a bullet hit the ground beside him, spraying dirt. Go, he yelled. I'll hold them off. Not without you. Harper yelled back. Mark's face was soaked, his jaw set. You have to get her out, and that box. Go, Harper. Ruth tugged her sleeve. He's right, dear. Please. Harper hesitated, then pulled Ruth toward the dark line of trees beyond the yard. They ran through the wet grass, clutching the wooden box like it was the last heartbeat of truth left in the world. Behind them, Mark Jensen raised his weapon again, and the sound of gunfire ripped through the night. Then silence. Harper stopped, chest heaving, rain dripping from her hair. Mark, she called. No answer. A distant siren wailed somewhere in the storm. The house glowed faintly, firelight flickering through the rain. Ruth whispered, "Is he?" Harper swallowed hard. "We can't stop now." She tightened her grip on the box. The truth wasn't safe yet, and the man she had trusted most might have just died protecting it. The storm chased them deep into the woods. Each gust of wind sounded like a warning. Each flash of lightning painted the trees white for an instant, then left them blind again. The rain had soaked through Harper's uniform. Her radio was dead. The box clutched in her hands felt heavier with every step. Ruth struggled to keep up, her breath coming in short gasps. I can't run anymore," she panted. "Please, Harper, just 1 minute." Harper slowed, listening. The shouts behind them had faded, but she knew better than to trust silence. "Okay," she said softly. "Just a minute. But we can't stop for long." They found a small clearing, half covered by a fallen tree. Harper guided Ruth under it for cover. The old woman sat down in the mud, exhausted, clutching the cross on her neck. Harper wiped rain from her face and opened the wooden box again. Inside, the papers were damp but intact. She carefully pulled out the flash drive, turning it over under her flashlight. It was black, scratched, and labeled in faint silver ink, "For the one who still believes." Ruth looked up. "Do you think that means Jonah?" Harper shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. "I think it means me." Lightning flashed again, revealing a narrow dirt road not far ahead. "There's a ranger outpost a mile that way," Harper said. "If we can get there, I can call for help." Ruth nodded weakly. "And the flash drive?" Harper slipped it into her vest pocket. "That's the only thing that can clear Jonah now." They started moving again, slower but steady. Mud sucked at their shoes. Branches tore at Harper's sleeves. Every sound made her jump, the snapping of twigs, the rush of wind, the echo of thunder. But then, behind them, a faint sound cut through the rain, a single gunshot. Harper froze. The sound was distant, but not too distant. Ruth clutched her arm. That was from the house. Harper didn't say anything. Her stomach already knew the truth. Mark Jensen, her friend, her partner, was gone. She forced herself forward. "Keep walking, Ruth. Don't look back." They reached the ranger outpost an hour later, a small, wooden building surrounded by pine trees and a single flickering lamp on the porch. The place was quiet. Too quiet. Harper knocked once. No answer. She tried the door. It creaked open easily. "Hello," she called. "Texas Department of Corrections. Anyone here?" Only the wind answered. She stepped inside, keeping her flashlight low. The room smelled of wet wood and coffee gone cold. A radio sat on the desk, light blinking faintly, still working. Harper rushed to it. "This is Officer Harper Lane, badge number 8217, she said quickly. "I need immediate backup at the ranger post near Highway 77, Waco County. Officer down, possible corruption case linked to Huntsville unit. Do you copy?" Static hissed. Then a voice. But not the one she hoped for. Well, the voice drawled. "If it isn't the good officer herself." Harper's heart sank. "Warden Davis." Glad to hear you're still breathing, he said, his tone smooth as oil. I was worried the storm might have swallowed you whole. You killed Mark, Harper said, her voice trembling with controlled fury. He made his choice, Davis replied calmly. Just like you will. Listen carefully, Harper, I don't want to hurt you. You're a good officer. You care too much, but that's not a crime. Hand over the evidence, and I'll make this all go away. Harper clenched her jaw. You framed an innocent man. You killed your own officers to protect a dead criminal's secret. You think I'm just going to hand it over? Davis sighed. Jonah Reed killed David Ellison. That's what the record says, and records are what matter. Nobody remembers the truth, just what's written. Not this time, Harper said. The line went silent. Then Davis chuckled softly. Then I suppose I'll have to rewrite your ending too. The radio cut off. Harper exhaled slowly, her pulse thundering in her ears. He's coming, she said. Ruth's face went pale. Where do we go? Harper looked out the window. Nowhere. If we run, he'll hunt us through the woods. We stay, and we make sure this evidence doesn't disappear again. She pulled her phone out, no signal. Then she spotted an old computer on the ranger's desk. It was slow, ancient, but plugged in. She turned it on. It flickered to life. The login screen asked for a password. Harper groaned. Come on. Try Ranger, Ruth said hopefully. Harper typed it, nothing. She tried admin this time, it worked. The desktop appeared slow, but functional. She plugged in the flash drive and waited. The files loaded, one by one, until a folder appeared, Ellison_contracts. Her throat went dry. Oh my God. Inside were scanned letters, emails, bank statements, and videos. One video was labeled, Ellison Confession, August 9, 2016. She double-clicked it. The screen flickered, then showed a shaky recording. A man sat in a dimly lit room, dark hair, gray eyes, nervous hands. It was David Ellison. He looked straight into the camera. If you're seeing this, then I couldn't fix what I started, he said. They wanted a scapegoat. Jonah Reed was perfect, wrong place, wrong time, wrong skin. Ruth covered her mouth, tears spilling. I didn't mean for anyone to die, David continued. But the warden said the system had to look clean. So I signed the papers. I made it look like Jonah killed me. Harper's breath caught. He staged his own death? The video glitched, then continued. But if I go through with this, they'll come for me too. If I don't, they'll take everything from my mother. I don't know what's right anymore. But I know this, it wasn't him. The screen went black. Ruth sobbed softly. My boy. Harper's mind raced. If this gets to the district attorney, Jonah walks free. Suddenly, a loud noise outside. Tires on gravel. Doors slamming. Harper yanked the flash drive from the computer and shoved it into her boot. She turned off the monitor, grabbed her gun, and whispered, Ruth, stay down. Headlights cut through the window. Shadows moved outside, 3 men in black coats, armed. Harper crouched low beside the door, her heart hammering. A deep voice called from outside. Officer Lane. Open up. We just want to talk. Ruth shook her head, whispering, don't. Harper stayed silent. Another voice joined, cold, familiar. If you don't open that door, I'll burn it down. It was Warden Davis. Harper's hands shook, but she steadied her aim. You'll have to go through me first, she shouted. There was a pause. Then, the unmistakable sound of gasoline splashing against wood. Ruth gasped. They're going to. Flames roared up the doorframe. The crackling heat hit instantly. The fire spread fast, licking across the walls, eating the air. Out the back, Harper yelled. She pulled Ruth toward the rear door, kicked it open, and they stumbled out into the storm again, coughing, half blinded by smoke. Behind them, the ranger post blazed like a beacon in the rain. Harper held Ruth's arm. Keep going. Don't stop. They ran down the muddy trail toward the creek. Thunder boomed overhead. The rain poured harder, trying to drown the fire, but the flames refused to die. When they finally reached the edge of the creek, Ruth fell to her knees, gasping for air. He'll find us, she whispered. He won't stop until he does. Harper looked down at the flash drive hidden in her boot, its weight pressing against her skin. Then I'll make sure he never gets the chance. She looked back toward the burning post, where orange flames clawed at the black sky. For a moment, she thought she saw someone standing in the fire, tall, broad-shouldered, unmoving, watching. But when the lightning flashed, he was gone. At dawn, Harper and Ruth found shelter in an abandoned farmhouse at the edge of the woods. The roof leaked. The floor creaked. But it was quiet. Ruth slept on an old couch, her breathing soft. Harper sat by the window, gun in her lap, watching the gray light stretch across the fields. She pulled the flash drive from her boot and turned it over in her fingers. The words, "for the one who still believes," were almost rubbed away. She whispered to herself, "I still do." Then she heard it, faint but clear, the sound of a car engine slowing down outside. She moved to the window, peering through the broken blinds. A black SUV rolled to a stop at the edge of the dirt road. And stepping out wasn't Warden Davis. It was someone else. Someone she never expected to see again. Jonah Reed. Alive. The sound of the car engine cut through the still morning air like a warning bell. Harper froze where she stood, peeking through the cracked blinds. The man walking toward the farmhouse moved slowly, almost cautiously, his brown prison uniform soaked, his wrists bruised, his face shadowed by the rising dawn. Ruth stirred from the couch and whispered, Who is it?" Harper didn't answer right away. Her heart hammered. She knew that walk. That quiet, steady way of carrying pain like a weight. "It's him," she finally said, voice shaking. "It's Jonah Reed." Ruth sat up, eyes wide. "That's impossible." "He's supposed to be." "I know." Harper's voice was barely a whisper. "He was on death row." The front door creaked. Jonah stepped inside, water dripping from his hair. For a moment, the three of them just stared at each other, an old woman, a fugitive, and an officer caught between justice and truth. Jonah raised his hands slowly. "I'm not here to hurt anyone." Harper lifted her gun anyway, trembling. "How did you get out?" Jonah gave a faint, tired smile. "Someone opened my cell during the fire." "What?" He nodded. "The locks disengaged right before the alarms went off. My door swung open. I thought it was a miracle. Then I heard the guards yelling, fire, smoke, chaos. I ran. I didn't know where to go. I just kept running until I saw your patrol car burning on the side of the road. That's when I realized something bigger was happening." Ruth stood, her hands shaking. "Jonah, I don't know if you'll believe me, but I never wanted this. I never wanted you to die for something you didn't do." Jonah's eyes softened. "I know, ma'am. I saw it in your eyes the moment you said you forgave me." Harper lowered her gun slightly, still wary. "If what you're saying is true, then someone helped you escape." "Someone inside." Jonah nodded slowly. "Yeah, but I don't think they were trying to save me." Harper frowned. "Then what were they trying to do?" He stepped closer. "Make it look like I escaped, so they'd have a reason to kill me outside the walls." The words hit like a slap. Harper's breath caught. Ruth gasped softly. "Oh my lord." Jonah looked at Harper. "The warden's men were already outside waiting for me. I barely got away. Someone must have told them I was gone." Harper clenched her jaw. "They're trying to erase everything, every witness, every piece of evidence. The flash drive, the confession you..." Jonah's eyes flicked to her pocket. "You found it?" She nodded. "David's confession. It's all there, the ledgers, the contracts, everything." He let out a shaky breath. "Then that's why they're coming for you too." Ruth took a small step toward Jonah, her frail hands trembling. "Son, I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know I believe you now. I know my David was part of something dark. I just didn't want to see it." Jonah's eyes glistened. "You don't have to ask me for forgiveness. I already gave it the day they locked me up." She turned toward the door. "We can't stay here. If Davis knows about the ranger post, he'll send people to search this whole area." Jonah nodded. "There's an old service road west of here. Leads to a railway line. We can follow it to town." Ruth looked weak, but she nodded too. "If that's what it takes to set things right, I'll walk barefoot." They packed what little they had: the box, a few bottles of water, the flash drive. Harper wrapped Ruth's shoulders in an old blanket and led them out into the pale light. The rain had stopped. Steam rose from the wet grass. Birds chirped somewhere far off, as if mocking how calm the world could look while it was still full of danger. They started walking. 2 hours later, they reached the abandoned rail line. Rusty tracks stretched toward the horizon. A train whistle blew faintly somewhere in the distance. Harper checked her watch, 9:15 a.m. They'd been on the run all night. "We'll follow the tracks to the next town," she said. "There's a sheriff's office there. I still know people who haven't sold their souls." Jonah gave her a small nod. "You think we can trust them?" "I don't trust anyone," Harper said. "But I have to try." They walked in silence for a while. Ruth hummed softly under her breath, maybe to calm herself, maybe to fill the heavy quiet. Then Harper's radio, the one she thought was dead, crackled to life. "Officer Lane," came the voice. Calm. Slow. Familiar. Her blood turned cold. "Warden Davis," she said through gritted teeth. "I hope you're proud of yourself," he said. "Running through the woods like a criminal, with the very man you were sworn to watch behind bars. You've gone too far this time. You killed my partner," Harper snapped. "You tried to burn us alive." "Your partner made a mistake," Davis said smoothly. "And so did you. But I'm willing to forgive that if you bring me what's mine." Harper's eyes narrowed. "What's yours?" "You mean the evidence that proves you're a murderer?" Davis laughed softly. "Evidence? You mean the fake confession I planted years ago? The one your precious flash drive can't even verify without my signature?" Harper froze. "What are you talking about?" Jonah turned sharply. "He's lying." "Am I?" Davis said, his voice almost playful. "You ever ask yourself why a warden would keep the very files that could ruin him locked in a box in a grieving mother's home? Why make it so easy for you to find? Think, Harper. Why would I do that?" Harper's heart began to pound. She looked at Jonah. He shook his head quickly. "Don't listen to him." But Davis's voice slithered through the static. "Because it wasn't my box. It wasn't my lie. And Jonah Reed isn't who you think he is." Jonah's eyes darkened. "Don't you start that again." Davis chuckled. "Tell her, Jonah. Tell her about the night you met David Ellison." Harper stared at him. "What is he talking about?" Jonah clenched his fists. "Don't listen." "Tell her," Davis said again, his tone sharper now. "Tell her what really happened the night you went to Ellison's house." Harper raised her voice. "Jonah, look at me. Did you know David before the murder?" Jonah hesitated, just for a second. But it was long enough. The silence spoke for him. Ruth gasped. You did." Jonah swallowed hard. "It wasn't what you think." Davis laughed coldly through the radio. "Oh, it never is it? The great Jonah Reed, the wronged man, the innocent soul, forgot to mention he worked for David. Transporting his money. Laundering it through fake construction companies. Isn't that right?" "That's not true," Jonah said fiercely. "I was trying to expose him. I went to his house that night to confront him, to make him tell the truth." Harper's voice rose. "But he died that night, Jonah." Jonah shook his head violently. "No, I didn't kill him. I swear on my life, he was alive when I left." Davis's voice dropped to a cruel whisper. "Except the security camera said otherwise. The same footage I kept safe all these years in case you ever got brave enough to talk." Jonah froze. His face went pale. Harper looked between them, realization hitting like thunder. "You set him up," she said to Davis. "You twisted everything, both of them." "Maybe," Davis said. "But tell me, Harper, when the world sees that footage, who will they believe? The escaped convict? The crooked officer? Or the decorated warden with 30 years of spotless service?" Then the radio went silent again. Harper stood frozen, the sound of the wind filling the space where her heartbeat should have been. Ruth whispered, "Is it true?" Jonah's voice broke. "I didn't kill him. But I knew what he was doing. I helped move the money once, just once, because he told me it would save a sick boy's life. I didn't know where it came from. When I found out, I went to confront him. He was alive when I walked out that door." Harper's throat was tight. "And then someone made sure you took the fall." Jonah nodded slowly. "Yes. The same man talking to you right now." Harper turned off the radio. "Then it's time we stop running." Jonah looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" She looked west, where the clouds were parting and the first sunlight spilled across the empty tracks. If Davis wants a confession, he'll get one, but not the kind he expects. We're taking this flash drive straight to the press. Ruth's eyes widened. The news. Yes, Harper said. National. Live. Before he can twist anything. Jonah nodded slowly, a fire lighting in his tired eyes. Then we better move fast. Harper looked down at the flash drive in her hand. For the first time, it felt like more than evidence, it felt like hope. But as they began walking down the tracks, Harper noticed something glinting ahead, something metallic, half buried in the gravel. She knelt to pick it up. It was a bullet casing, still warm. And before she could react, a sharp crack split the air. Gunfire. A bullet hit the tree beside her head, spraying bark. Get down, Harper shouted. Jonah pulled Ruth to the ground. More shots echoed from the ridge above the tracks. The sound was too close. Harper crawled to cover, heart pounding. They found us. Jonah grabbed her arm. No, they waited for us. She looked at him and saw something new in his eyes. Something he hadn't said yet. He knew who had led them there. The first bullet sliced through the air so close it burned Harper's cheek. She dropped to the ground, rolling behind a broken section of rail. Jonah pulled Ruth low beside him, shielding her as dirt and gravel exploded around them. Harper shouted over the gunfire, 2 shooters, maybe 3. On the ridge. Jonah peeked up just long enough to fire one quick shot from the pistol he'd taken off a guard the night he escaped. Sparks danced off metal. The attackers ducked behind trees. Stay down, Ruth. Harper yelled, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear her own words. Don't move. Ruth clutched her cross, whispering a prayer. Please, Lord, not here, not like this. Harper pressed her back against the track and reloaded. They knew exactly where to find us. Jonah, you said it yourself. Someone led us here. Jonah nodded grimly. I know. But not Davis. He couldn't have tracked us this fast. Then who? Jonah hesitated. You're not going to like the answer. Before Harper could respond, a familiar voice echoed from the trees, rough, tired, but unmistakably alive. Put the guns down, Harper. We need to talk. Harper's heart stopped. No. She rose just enough to see him clearly through the haze of dust and sunlight. It was Mark Jensen. Alive. He stood at the edge of the ridge, flanked by 2 armed men in dark coats. His left arm was bandaged, blood seeping through the wrap. His eyes, the same steady eyes she once trusted, looked colder now, darker. Jonah's face twisted in disbelief. You've got to be kidding me. Ruth gasped. But he saved us. Harper's mind spun. Mark, she shouted, voice cracking. How could you? He stepped closer, lowering his weapon slightly. You need to listen to me. You don't understand what you're carrying. I understand perfectly, Harper said, raising her gun again. You're working with Davis. Mark shook his head. No, Harper. I'm working against him. But you've got something neither of us were supposed to find. That flash drive doesn't just have Jonah's case on it. It's got files on every dirty contract tied to the prison network, judges, police chiefs, senators. Do you understand what that means? Jonah growled. It means you're trying to take it for yourself. Mark looked pained. You think I'd do this for money? You think I went back into that fire for that? Harper's voice trembled. You lied to me, Mark. You let me believe you were dead. I had to, he shouted. If Davis knew I survived, he would have killed both of us before sunrise. The only way to get close enough to end this was to make him think I was gone. Harper hesitated. His voice, the raw desperation in it, sounded real. But she'd been lied to too many times to trust easily. Then why are you pointing a gun at me? She asked. Mark looked straight at her. Because there's someone in your circle feeding him every move you make. Her blood ran cold. What are you talking about? He pointed toward Ruth. Her phone. It's been active since the chapel. There's a tracking chip inside the case. That's how Davis keeps finding you. Ruth's hand flew to her sweater pocket. My phone? No, that can't be. Harper yanked it from her trembling fingers, flipped the back cover open, and froze. A thin metal tracker was glued inside. Jonah cursed under his breath. He's been following us this whole time. Harper crushed the tracker under her boot, sparks flying. So now what, Mark? You expect me to believe you're on our side? Mark stepped down from the ridge slowly, keeping his weapon lowered. You don't have to believe me. Just trust that I'm the only one who knows how to end this. By giving you the drive? Harper said coldly. He shook his head. By broadcasting what's on it. But we can't do it here. Davis has the state police in his pocket. We need to go federal. Jonah scoffed. Oh sure, because the feds are known for their honesty. Mark shot him a tired look. You want to die in the woods, or do you want your name cleared? The wind howled between them, carrying the smell of gunpowder and wet pine. Harper's hands trembled around her gun. Her instincts screamed at her to keep fighting, but her gut told her something else, that maybe, just maybe, Mark was telling the truth. Then Ruth cried out suddenly, pointing behind them. They're coming. Harper turned and saw two black SUVs tearing down the service road, headlights cutting through the dust. Davis's men. Mark swore. Too late. He's here himself. Harper grabbed Ruth's arm. We need to move. But before they could run, the SUVs skidded to a stop, blocking both sides of the track. Doors slammed open. Armed men poured out, rifles raised. And from the second vehicle stepped Warden Davis, calm and collected in a dark overcoat. His expression was almost amused. Well, he said, voice smooth as silk. The family reunion's complete. Harper pointed her gun at him. It's over, Davis. We have proof of everything. He smiled faintly. Do you? He nodded toward Mark. Tell her, deputy. Harper blinked. What? Mark's jaw tightened. Don't listen to him. Davis chuckled. Oh, come now. You think I don't know about your little flash drive trick? You gave me half of it before the fire. Harper's chest clenched. That's a lie. But Mark didn't deny it fast enough. Jonah's voice rose. You sold us out again? Mark shouted, no. I gave him a decoy. The real one's still with Harper. Davis's smile widened. You sure about that, Harper? Check your pocket. Harper's heart dropped. She reached for her vest, empty. The flash drive was gone. She turned to Mark in horror. What did you do? I didn't, he started, but before he could finish, Davis lifted his gun and fired. The shot echoed across the tracks. Mark stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder, and fell to the ground. The box flew from his hand, scattering papers into the wind. Harper screamed, diving behind the rail as bullets rained down. Jonah grabbed Ruth, pulling her to cover. Mark! Harper shouted. Blood seeped through his shirt. He looked up at her, eyes glassy, lips trembling. The drive, he whispered. Boot, your boot. Harper froze, then realized. He'd switched it. The real flash drive was still hidden in her boot. Davis didn't know. She glanced at Jonah. We have to move. Now. They crawled along the ditch beside the tracks as Davis's men closed in. The air filled with smoke and screams. Ruth tripped, but Harper caught her, dragging her behind a pile of gravel. A bullet ricocheted off the rail, inches from her head. Another tore through her sleeve. She fired back twice, hitting one of the men in the leg. Jonah shouted, "There's a tunnel ahead." They sprinted toward it, a dark, stone culvert under the tracks. Ruth stumbled in first, Jonah behind her, Harper last. They ran through the narrow tunnel until daylight appeared on the other side. When they finally emerged, Harper turned back and saw Mark Jensen lying motionless by the rails. Davis stood over him, gun smoking, his voice echoing through the open air. You can't run from the truth, Harper. Because I own it. Harper stared at him from the distance, mud splattered, bleeding, shaking, and shouted back. Then maybe it's time you lose everything you own. She fired one last shot. It hit the gas tank of the nearest SUV. The explosion ripped through the tracks, shaking the ground, flames spiraling into the sky. Davis dove for cover as his men scattered. Harper turned and ran, gripping Ruth's hand with one and Jonah's with the other, the three of them disappearing into the smoke. When the sound of the explosion faded behind them, they collapsed near a quiet riverbank a few miles away. Ruth wept silently, clutching Harper's hand. How much more of this can we take? Harper looked toward the horizon, her face hard, but her eyes full of pain. As long as it takes to make sure Jonah Reed walks free. Jonah nodded, his voice low. And to make sure the world knows who Warden Davis really is. Harper reached down to her boot, pulled out the flash drive streaked with mud, but intact, and looked at them both. Next stop, she said quietly, Dallas. Federal Bureau, Field Office. We're ending this there. But just as she stood up, Ruth's phone, the one Harper thought she'd destroyed, began to buzz. Harper froze. She picked it up. The screen flickered, cracked, waterlogged, but one new message blinked through the static. We're waiting for you in Dallas. No name, no number, just those words. Harper's eyes darkened. He knows where we're going. Jonah stepped closer. Then it's a trap. Harper nodded slowly. Yeah, but this time. She slipped the flash drive into her pocket and cocked her gun. We're walking straight into it. The Dallas skyline rose in the distance, tall, silver, and heartless against the gray morning sky. Harper gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. The road stretched endlessly ahead, each mile heavier than the last. Jonah sat beside her, silent, his hands cuffed in front only for disguise. Ruth lay in the back seat, exhausted but clutching her Bible, lips moving in quiet prayer. Harper hadn't slept. Her body ran on adrenaline and purpose, the kind that comes when the line between justice and survival starts to blur. In her boot, the flash drive still pressed against her ankle like a heartbeat. We'll reach the Federal Bureau in 15 minutes, she said, eyes on the horizon. Jonah looked at her. You sure about this? What if it's another setup? Harper's jaw tightened. If it is, then we burn everything down before they touch this evidence. Ruth sat up slowly. You keep saying that word, burn. You sound like someone who's ready to lose everything. Harper glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Maybe that's what it takes to start something honest. The car rolled through the city, weaving between traffic. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened. Harper's heart beat faster as she turned the last corner and saw the tall white building ahead, the Dallas Federal Bureau Field Office. She pulled into the parking lot and stopped the engine. This is it. Jonah stared at the entrance. Glass doors, 2 guards, metal detectors. You think they'll even let us in? They will, Harper said, reaching for her badge. We're about to hand them a case bigger than any they've seen in years. They stepped out into the cool air. Harper's boots splashed in a shallow puddle. Ruth leaned on Jonah's arm as they approached the doors. The guards glanced at them suspiciously but didn't move. Harper flashed her badge. Officer Harper Lane, Texas Department of Corrections, she said. We need to speak with a federal agent immediately. The guard picked up his radio. Ma'am, wait right here. A few tense seconds passed. Then the glass doors opened, and a tall man in a gray suit walked out. His expression was calm, polite, but his eyes carried the kind of watchfulness that made Harper's stomach twist. Officer Lane, he said smoothly. I'm Special Agent Raymond Carter. We've been expecting you. Harper blinked. Expecting us? Yes, he said, smiling faintly. You've had quite a journey. Jonah shifted uneasily. How could they be expecting us? We didn't call ahead. Agent Carter gestured toward the doors. Let's talk inside. It's safer. Harper hesitated. Every instinct screamed caution. But they were surrounded, 2 guards behind them, security cameras overhead. Running wasn't an option. She nodded once. Lead the way. Inside, the building smelled of coffee and cold air conditioning. Carter led them down a long corridor to a quiet conference room. A glass wall looked out over the city. Please, he said, motioning to the chairs. Sit. Ruth sank down first, clutching her Bible. Jonah stayed standing. Harper sat halfway, still watching Carter's every move. He smiled. You've caused quite a storm, Officer Lane. Warden Davis has been calling every agency in Texas for the past 12 hours. Claims you've stolen classified evidence. Harper met his gaze. Then he should be here to defend himself. Because that classified evidence is proof he's been running an illegal network through state prisons. Carter raised an eyebrow. That's a serious accusation. I have the proof right here, she said, pulling the flash drive from her pocket. For the first time, Carter's expression flickered. His smile didn't reach his eyes. May I see it? Harper didn't hand it over immediately. I want protection for my witnesses first. The woman and the man with me, no arrests, no questioning until after this is verified. Carter nodded slowly. Of course. You have my word. Harper placed the flash drive on the table. Everything's in there. The contracts, the payoffs, even David Ellison's confession. Carter reached for it. But as he did, Harper noticed something. A tiny tattoo on his wrist, the same symbol she'd seen on one of the men who'd attacked them by the railway. Her blood went cold. She stood quickly. Wait. Carter froze, smile fading. Is there a problem? Jonah stepped forward. Who are you really? Carter sighed, rubbing his wrist. You're smarter than I hoped. Before Harper could reach for her gun, the door behind her clicked, locked automatically. 2 agents appeared at the window, watching but not entering. Ruth's voice trembled. Oh no, oh no. Carter picked up the flash drive and twirled it between his fingers. Do you really think you could expose something this big by walking into my building? Harper's throat tightened. You work for them. Carter smiled. Not for them. Above them. He placed the drive into his laptop. The screen lit up with file names. You see, Officer Lane, the network doesn't end with Warden Davis. He's just one of many branches. The route goes far deeper: private prisons, government funding, justice contracts. Everyone eats, everyone keeps quiet. Jonah's fists clenched. You ruined my life for money. Carter didn't even look at him. You were convenient. So was David Ellison. And now, Officer Lane, you'll be convenient too. The official story will be simple: rogue officer helps death row inmate escape, both die in a shootout. Clean. Tragic. Inspiring even. He pressed a key. The files on the flash drive began deleting one by one. Harper lunged forward. No. Carter's gun was in his hand instantly, aimed between her eyes. Don't. Harper looked down at him. I've done my job. A distant alarm began to sound, not from the building, but from the phones outside. Agents running, shouting. The news had already broken. Jonah slumped to the ground, bleeding but smiling weakly. Guess you got your truth after all. Harper knelt beside him. We both did. Ruth took his hand, tears streaming down her face. You're free now, son. Even if the world doesn't see it yet, God does. Sirens echoed in the distance, but this time, they weren't chasing them. Harper stood, staring out at the rising sun. The city below looked different, not clean, not perfect, but honest. The truth was finally out there, and no one could bury it again. She turned back to Jonah, who looked peaceful now, eyes closing slowly. You kept your promise, he whispered. You believed. And then he went still. Harper felt something break quietly inside her. She didn't cry. She just held his hand until the sound of approaching footsteps filled the hall. When the doors burst open and real federal agents stormed in, Harper raised her hands. It's done, she said softly. Check the servers. You'll see. One agent stared at the screen. The files live-streamed across every major network in America. Evidence. Names. Money trails. The truth. Weeks later, Harper stood alone at a small Texas cemetery. Jonah Reed's grave was simple: no flowers, no crowd. Just her and Ruth. Ruth laid a single lily on the headstone. He never stopped believing in mercy, she said. Harper nodded quietly. Neither did you. As they turned to leave, Harper's phone buzzed. A new message. From an unknown number. The network isn't gone. It's only moved. No signature. No location. She looked up at the sky, heavy clouds rolling over the horizon. Ruth touched her arm. What is it? Harper slipped the phone into her pocket. Nothing, she said softly. Just unfinished business. Then she walked away, the wind rising behind her, carrying the whisper of a name that would never die: Jonah Reed. And somewhere, deep in a dark office miles away, another man closed his laptop, smiling faintly. On his wrist, the same small tattoo. The cycle had begun again.